There are so many things to do every day, and sometimes it's hard to catch my breath. I have to prep costumes, sweep the stage, and get scripts ready for rehearsal. It can be overwhelming, but every chance I get, I sneak away to be a part of the audience and watch the show. Plays and musicals are a lot like books and movies. They tell stories, and I can't wait to find out what's going to happen next. There are some pretty amazing stories in the Bible, too. The Bible is God's message to us about himself, and it is full of true stories about how God worked in people's lives in amazing ways. God was not only a part of their stories, he knew their stories, from beginning to end and everything in between. Just like God knew the stories of all the people in the Bible and knew how their lives would turn out, he knows all about your life story too. He knows your story from the very beginning all the way to the very end. So when things aren't going great, or maybe your life just feels out of control, you can remember that God knows what will happen. He loves you and cares about what you are going through. He is in complete control. He knew exactly when you would be born and knows everything about you. God loves our stories and loves to do great things in our lives. Let's open the Bible and read a story from the book of Esther. The Bible is broken up into different stories to help follow along. And the true story of Esther is about a woman who God put in a very special place to save a very special group of people. Let's read it. Esther 1 through 8. A large group of God's chosen people, the Jewish people, were living in the Persian Empire. King Ahasuerus was the king of Persia. The king was looking for a wife, so all the eligible young women were brought before him. The king chose a young woman named Esther to be his queen. Esther's uncle was named Mordecai, and he worked at the palace gate. Mordecai heard that one of the king's closest leaders, Haman, had planned to kill all the Jews in the empire. Mordecai was upset, and all of the Jewish people began to pray and cry out to God to save them. Esther didn't know what was wrong. She sent a messenger to ask Mordecai why all the Jews were upset. Mordecai told Esther about Haman's evil plan. He told her to talk to the king and ask him to stop Haman's plan and save her people. Esther sent a message back to Mordecai. She told him that no one could approach the king unless the king calls for that person first. The punishment would be death, unless the king held out his scepter and said she could live. Mordecai reminded Esther that she was a Jew, and that even though she was the queen, she would be killed too. Mordecai told her that this may be why she was queen. Maybe God put Esther in the palace to save her people. Esther asked Mordecai and the Jews to pray and not eat food for 3 days. Then Esther would go to the king, even if it meant she might die. Wait, I want to be sure you see this. Mordecai told Esther that she may have been made queen for this exact reason. Esther was so brave and trusted God so much that she agreed to talk to the king, even though it could possibly kill her. Esther really trusted God with her story. Let's see what happened next. On the 3rd day, Esther went to the king. He saw Esther and held out his golden scepter. The king told her that he would give her anything, up to half of his kingdom. Esther asked the king if he and Haman would come to a feast. So Haman and the king went to Esther's feast. After eating, the king asked Esther what she wanted and told her that he would give it to her. Esther asked the king and Haman to come back to a feast the next day. The king agreed. The next day, Haman and the king went to Esther's feast. After eating, the king asked Esther what she wanted and told her that he would give it to her. So Esther told him. She told the king about the plan to kill her people. The king asked Esther who was responsible for this plan. Esther told him it was Haman. The king was angry. He punished Haman and made a law to keep the Jewish people safe from their enemies. Through this, God's people were saved. I love this story. It's amazing that God chose Esther to be queen and to live in that palace so that she could save her people. I like how it says that she prayed to God and trusted him so that when it was time for her to stand up for her people and face the king, she was ready. And just like Esther trusted God and asked him to help her face the king, we can trust his plan for us when our lives feel a little out of control. God cares about our stories and loves it when we ask him to be a part of our lives. God's plan for you is to know him and follow him. When you feel overwhelmed or things aren't going the way you wish they would, you can have courage, be strong, and trust that God is in control and has a plan. Our great, big, all-knowing, completely unshakable God is with you. No matter where you are, he knows your story, and you can trust that his plan is way bigger and better than anything you could come up with on your own. I know I feel so secure knowing that God's in control of my story.